nope, not yet.
Okay, all right.
Before we get into the alignment, I just want to go through how we get the setup put into place for alignment so that you can appreciate the parts that are involved. Obviously, we have to start with the socket. We have anterior, posterior, medial, and lateral. We add to the bottom of that our spacer plate for this particular type of adapter. We have our socket adapter with 4 attachment screws. They get threaded into the bottom of the socket. There is a rotatable collar on the top of this that allows us to create the motions that we need for a bench alignment. Once we have that attached, I can put the knee unit on it, and that'll go right into our adapter here. Take way too much time. We have our knee unit. We do have a front and a back, so I make sure the front of the knee is in the front of the unit. Once we have our knee unit in place, we'll go to the next piece on the prostheses, which is going to be our tube clamp. And our tube clamp will go on the distal end or the bottom of the knee unit itself. That is another adjustment area that when we're doing bench alignment, we will make adjustments at this level as well, if we need to. Tighten our screws down. Each one of these sections, both our rotatable adapter and our tube clamp, have 4 adjustment screws, 1 anterior, 1 posterior, 1 medial, and 1 lateral. We add our pylon with our fixed receiver. That goes into the tube clamp, and we tighten our tube clamp down. We also need to have a foot and a foot adapter. The foot adapter gets added onto the top of the foot. Put a bolt through the bottom of the foot. Attach that into place. And that's where we get adjustments at the ankle itself. Now that we have our foot adapter in place, we can put the rest of the prostheses to the foot adapter. Now we have the full transfemoral prostheses, and we can start talking about bench aligning the prostheses and the motions that go into that. We get that tightened. And again, each one of these couplings have 4 screws which allow me to adjust it in both the sagittal and the coronal plane. We're going to do 3 types of adjustments for our bench alignment. And basically, if you think of it as an X, Y, and Z axis on a graph, we have our coronal plane, which is looking at it from the front or the back. We have our sagittal plane, which is looking at it from the side, either lateral or medial. And then we have our transverse plane, which is looking at it from the top or the bottom. All 3 of those adjustments have to be made on a bench alignment. First thing we need to do is set the heel up with a heel wedge so that the keel of the shoe, or the keel of the foot rather, is level. If I want to do adjustments in the coronal plane, and I want to put a lateral angulation into this system, if I want the whole system to move lateral, I am going to loosen the medial screw, and I'm going to tighten the lateral screw, and that is going to put an angulation in the entire system. If I want to go the opposite direction, I loosen the lateral screw, tighten the medial screw, and then I put my angulation in the opposite direction. If I move up to my next clamp, I can create those same angulations, moving only the knee and the socket, allowing the pylon to stay in its vertical position. If I go above the knee to my rotatable adapter, again, I can do the same angulations, lateral or medial, leaving the knee unit in its vertical position in relationship to the vertical pylon. So those are 3 points of adjustments in that coronal plane. We have adjustments at that same level in the sagittal plane. So if I want to move this socket anterior over the foot, and I want to move the whole system over the foot, I'm going to loosen the posterior or the back screw. I'm going to tighten the anterior or the front adjustment screw, and that gives me my angulation in that direction. If I want to move it further posterior or back over the foot, I loosen the anterior, tighten the posterior, and that moves it back over the foot. And there's specific alignment and specific placement of the socket and the knee in relationship to the foot. If I want to move just the knee unit and the socket as a combination, I move my adjustments to here. So if I want to move that socket anterior over the foot, and I want the angulation in the knee to reflect that as well, I'm going to loosen my posterior screw, tighten my anterior screw. If I want to move just the socket and leave the knee unit and the pylon in the position they're in, then I come up to the level of the rotatable socket adapter. So that would be the adjustments in our sagittal view. So we have coronal, sagittal. When we talk about transverse, we have 2 points of adjustment. One is going to be at the tube clamp here, where I can loosen this tube clamp. Now I can rotate the socket and knee in relationship to the foot by just turning the both of them together. If I have the knee unit where I want it, but I want to continue to move the socket in one direction or other in the transverse plane, I can come up to my socket attachment here, my socket adapter, loosen the 4 bolts that hold it into place, and then I can turn at the socket adapter to get my rotation there. And those are the adjustments for a transfemoral prosthesis. And that's it.